researcher and has had meaningful collaborations with her father, renowned emotion researcher, Dr. Paul Ekman. Their most recent project, the Atlas of Emotions, is an online visual tool to teach a language for improving our emotional awareness that was commissioned and supported by the Dalai Lama. Eve is the co-lead instructor for Cultivating Emotional Balance, an evidence-based meditation and emotional regulation training program developed by Dr. Paul Ekman and Buddhist scholar Alan Wallace. So welcome, Eve.
Thank you. I'd say most important on my resume is alumni of Mission Dharma. Just so grateful to be here, and yeah, truly an honor to hold space and support this Sangha. I got so much support from this Sangha over the years, and am just so indebted to the community that creates this space so that we can be together, and to Howie for the heart space that he radiates so lovely. So really happy I can support him and support you all by being together tonight. Tonight, we're going to do a little bit of a focus specifically on joy. So as Jimmy and some of my other Sangha friends from Wednesday night know, we started talking about joy last week, and it was such a rich conversation. Not empathetic joy, which I'm entirely in favor of, but actually the sense of joy that's always already within us and just waiting to be revealed. That sense of our, as Sokni Rinpoche would put it, our basic okayness. And it's not something you hear talked about too often. And so I'm happy to change that a bit. I think actually I was reflecting on it today. Connecting to and talking about joy, at least to me, it feels like one of the most vulnerable things that we can talk about. Shame, sadness, disgust, guilt, bring it on, no problem. I feel very confident. When we talk about joy, there can be a real, I don't know the right word, like delicate, like such a longing, and so many obstacles to our joy. We had a very meaningful discussion last week with the group here on Wednesday about our obstacles to joy, including not feeling we deserve it. One of our participants beautifully said that sometimes he catches himself feeling joy and he's like, oh, wait, how did that sneak in? I didn't earn that, right? This idea that it can't just happen. It has to be something we do and we achieve. And I think another obstacle to our joy is feeling like it's ours, as opposed to it just is. It's, again, you'll be hearing me quote Sokni Rinpoche a lot tonight, who's just a wonderful Tibetan teacher. And I've learned a lot from him and the practices I'll be sharing, and especially on this topic. He says it's our birthright. And to be able to do the work to kind of reconnect to that essence, to that basic nature of joy, is hard work. It's the work of the Dharma, of kind of working with what comes up, what is in some ways preventing us to see what's already there, and also to see reality as it is. So tonight we'll do a practice that's based in starting to kind of make space for joy. We last week went directly into a practice of joy, and I'd say some people face planted along the way. They were like, gosh, I don't know about this. Joy? Like, aren't we supposed to be doing hard work here? And I thought it might be sweet tonight for us to work with the emotions that are here in the body. So this is a practice that's called the handshake practice with emotion. Maybe some of you have done this practice before. It's a practice of essentially greeting and meeting and finding a sense of willingness to be with what's already here. So very often when we're in our practice and a difficult emotion arises, we think there's a problem. We maybe contract or tighten up. Maybe we try to kind of refocus on our breath or whatever is the object of our attention. But tonight, we're going to start the practice by really allowing ourselves to be with what's here, and to be with what's here in an embodied way. So that might sound a little abstract. So I'll give you an example. I don't want to just launch into practice and have you think, wait, what was it? What was the instruction? How am I doing this? So if we think of what's the embodied experience of our emotions or obstacles, if you can remember the last time you felt pretty frustrated, maybe you read the news, right? Maybe someone disappointed you or you felt hurt and misunderstood. That's a real different feeling than the last time you felt lonely, like no one was around and you just didn't know if there was a sense of connection available to you within and certainly without. Did the differences of those feelings, that resonate for folks? And so when we sit with ourselves and practice as we do, settling in our body, speech, and mind, very soon we notice that we have some visitors, often conceptual visitors, like, why did I have 2 tacos at dinner? I should have had 1. Or what is it I'm supposed to do tomorrow? Or who is this person leading the class tonight? Right? We have a lot of these ideas. And I'm going to ask us to, bless you, to not, again, try to get rid of those ideas, but notice what is the charge in the body as these come up. Some of them might be that kind of leaning towards with desire. And some of those might be just like, oh God, I don't want to feel or think that. And so in this practice, we begin by making space for whatever it is that's there. So feeling arises, we make space around it. Thought or image arises, we make space around it. And we do so by continuing to come back to the body. It's a very interesting phenomena that has been very well studied in science, that if we come back to the felt sensations in the body, are able to kind of identify the experience, we can help essentially decenter ourselves from whatever the thoughts are. So we're thinking about something and we're trying as hard as we can to push it away, and that's maybe successful for a single breath, it comes back. But if we open up and don't energize it, don't continue to think, but notice, how is this thought impacting my body? That's the way we make space. Letting whatever arises, and dropping into the body. And dropping into the body. And what we may notice is we can become like cartographers of our embodied emotion experience. There's just so many varieties of sensations. On a longer retreat, I noticed just this really particular way that fear exists in my face. It's like a little mask around my eyes and a little kind of strap all the way down to my chin. And the more I was able to feel into that and notice it, and the less I was, getting caught up with and dancing with the content of that fear, the more space was there. So that'll be our invitation for the beginning of this practice, is to essentially kind of work with these experiences of embodied emotion. And then we will give ourselves moments to just be with what is there when we aren't preoccupied with that surface layer of thinking. And my hope, my hypothesis, is what we'll find there is this real basic goodness, this sense of intrinsic joy, that inner light, that gold that's sometimes buried beneath the layers of dirt that just gets accumulated through our understandably difficult experiences, living in this world, in this time, and throughout our lives often. So that's our goal here, starting by feeling, and I'll be instructing you to kind of shake hands with the emotion, not give it a bear hug, not push it away, but just meet with dignity, with respect, our emotional experiences, giving way to space, connecting to what remains in the space. With you don't have to believe it, the classic teachings of the Buddha, come and see, but the openness and possibility that what might be there is that already okayness, that sense of joy that's the wellspring within us. So that will be our process, and then we will take a little break. I have some other thoughts I'd like to share with you on the topic, and I'd also love to hear your questions, your protests. what you think about this practice and what this idea of bringing joy into our Dharma brings up for you. I do see a hand already. I wonder if it's worth attending to that. Is that something, Mary, you think we should attend to there on the iPhone?
Oops. Oh, his hand just went down.
Okay, it was attended to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe that was an affirmation. I'm with you. And you all can hear me pretty well online? Yeah, great. Okay, so let's go ahead and find a posture that will support our practice. So interesting that we can really use, all of our life of practice, of course, but all of the parts of our practice as practice. And finding a posture that really supports the dignity of our practice and the ease of our practice is such an essential part of settling in. So I'll invite us, instead of just going right into the posture, to maybe notice what it's like to tilt a little bit to the right, and then to tilt a little bit to the left, maybe tilt forward and backwards, and find that place where there's a real natural uprightness to the spine. And then give yourself a moment to simply raise your shoulders to your ears, if that's comfortable, and then exhaling them down your back. And trying that one more time, inhaling, shoulders up, exhaling back. One more time, up. And notice how the chest feels, maybe feeling or inviting a sense of spaciousness. And find a place for your hands to be comfortable. This could be resting on your knees or folded in your lap. As we place our hands, we can imagine connecting to that sense of groundedness, stable like the mountain. Checking in that our head is resting evenly on our neck. Not tilting too far back or sloping forward. And whether the eyes are open or closed, feel a softening through the eyes. Feel or imagine that the gaze could be pointed inward towards your own heart. We begin by allowing ourselves to feel a sense of our bodies in this place and in this space. Inviting a sense of connection, not only to our bodies in the chair or cushion beneath, but to this place throughout its time and history. Here in the mission, we're on the ancestral and present-day lands of the Miwok and Ohlone peoples. And feeling that sense of presence and support with the space around us. Although most of us are probably inside, in the mind's eye, imagine the sky and the sun just gently starting to go behind the horizon here in California. And inviting a sense of connection and harmony, even with eyes closed, whether online or in person, with the beingness of our bodies alongside the beingness of other bodies. Feeling the presence of Sangha. And to help start settling our mind, bring our focused attention to an awareness of the breath. This could be through the subtle sensations at the nostrils, maybe the gentle rise and fall at the shoulders, or as the belly also finds its natural rhythm, rising and falling. Pour all of your attention into this following of the breath. When your attention inevitably wanders away, no problem. Relax and see how gently and how lovingly you can invite your attention back, focusing on the breath and saturating your attention with a following of the full cycle of inhale and exhale. As we breathe in, we simply know and are aware we are breathing in. And as we breathe out, we bring that same knowing and awareness to breathing out. And through this simple practice, we can cut through the thoughts and distractions and find clarity. Now that we've begun to make our mind serviceable, consider your intention for coming tonight. Let this intention feel like a guiding light, something which illuminates your practice, inspires. Invite the intention or aspiration to recede a bit into the background. And we'll shift our attention and awareness now to this practice of shaking hands or meeting with our emotions. The practice is simple. We gently notice, bring our awareness to the body, all the tactile sensations in the body. We may already be aware that there's something pulling or tugging, maybe a sense of worry, maybe a sense of loss, maybe a sense of contentment or joy. Notice whatever you can experience in the body as an emotion, a resonance with either a thought or an event. And without any story or elaboration, notice the feelings and sensations, the tingling or warmth, the heaviness. And breath by breath, imagine making space for whatever is here. Keep bringing the awareness and attention fully into the body, the subtle body. This layer of sensation that reflects our heart and our mind. Maybe a feeling comes like a wave, arises and passes. Maybe there's a feeling that's a bit more stuck. Maybe a combination. No problem if the feeling is just kind of dull or neutral. Just keep attending and noticing to the felt sensations in the body. If a sensation feels too strong, or dense, you can return more of your focus to breathing and put a hand on the belly and focus there. Otherwise, just keep inviting spaciousness as though there were enough room for everything and anything to be felt, to be unwound, and to gently dissipate and shift. Keep coming back to the body. Even if a story arises, just drop the story. Notice the feeling, what has shifted or changed in the body. An essential part of this practice is our willingness and our courage to be with what's here without an agenda or expectation, just with this offering of meeting, making space, meeting, making space. Maybe we're with the sensations of an emotion, or maybe we're in a space in between. Wherever the experience is in the body, consider this inquiry of whether there's something here that's already good, not a passing feeling of tightness or even giddiness or joy, but something at this more core or deep level, a sense of unconditioned goodness, okayness, not because of something we did or who we are, but that part of our nature that's always already deeply okay. Just like the sun that's always there, even amid clouds and wind and rain and snow. See if we can feel that radiant warmth of goodness, even amid the turbulence of our emotions, thoughts, feelings. Maybe that sense of okayness is flickering, coming and going. Or maybe we get a bit of steadiness. We can just rest in that, allowing our senses to be saturated with that experience of just okay. As we begin to bring our practice to a close, seeing if you can bring this sense of goodness or okayness back to the breath, focusing breath by breath. Thank you for your practice. I think, is this where we do announcements and break? Is that true? Okay.
It's up to you, Eve, if you want to do question and answer before break, or we can do the break now and however you want to organize it.
Folks might want to stretch, so we can, yeah, do that for them.
Okay, so let me just do a couple of little announcements before
Okay, great.
folks wander off. So anyway, just a couple of announcements. So I want to let folks know again about the inaugural Mission Dharma small group mentoring, which begins in September. There are like 2 spots left. And what the small group mentoring is, it's an intimate group of practitioners coming together with me as the teacher for an opportunity to have discussion, connection, deepen our practice, and really excited about this. So that starts at the beginning of September. I'll put the link in the chat. And if you have any questions, feel free to give me a holler. Next week, we will be live again at here at the San Francisco Dharma Center. There, yes, not at my house. Please do not come to my house. Teacher TBD. So, but if you're here in the city, just come in and absorb the goodness of being with others. It's really a lovely feeling. And then finally, just a reminder about Donna. I'm really excited that Eve is going to talk about joy tonight and keeps evoking joy. Donna is a practice of joy. You know, there is joy in that intention of to give, joy in the action of giving, and joy in the memory and the remembering of giving. So with much appreciation, if you have appreciation for Mission Dharma and for Eve being here tonight, I will put the information in the chat, and thank you in advance for your offerings. Okay, Eve, back to you.
Okay, so it's 7:47. Let's come back in 10. So just before 8. Is that usually how you all do? Okay, great. Very luxurious. We don't give a break during the Dharma Collective. Power through.
I haven't been given enough breaks, so it's nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so it is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started getting used to it. Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I'm gonna have to treat back into. I know that. The last couple of years, I felt my reliability. And it wasn't for a year. All of that sort of
Guess I'm not good at breaks anymore. I'm like 5 minutes enough. So yeah, really such a joy to be in presence with you all, virtually and here, and just to be having a sense of practicing together. It just matters so much. And yeah, really grateful for that. Would love to hear any questions or reflections on that practice. I know that's maybe a little different for some folks. Maybe that's a familiar practice or some version of that. I will say that, you know, when Sokni talks about that practice, the handshake practice, he talks about it as this kind of almost like a preparatory practice to be able to do anything. Shamatha, Vipassana, any of our heart practices, like how can we move forward if we're just getting yanked side to side by our emotions, by our feelings. And, you know, he said when he first started teaching about 25 years ago, outside of Kathmandu, where his monastery and nunnery is, that he was so impressed that his students, they were just very strong in the concepts and the ideas. Really like, oh, wow, they really get it. But in terms of, you know, just that ability to be at ease and feel at home in the heart, that was much harder for his students outside of Kathmandu. And this practice was one that he kind of started working on as he was integrating and learning from and sharing with more folks from contemporary psychological approaches. You know, you have maybe have all heard this, but there is absolutely Buddhist psychology, right? A kind of ancient contemplative practice of the mind. And then the contemporary psychology, it's a different orientation to our emotions. And he has really appreciated kind of learning and kind of growing up with this contemplative science that I myself feel so fortunate to have grown up with. So this practice is in some ways, it's drawing from ancient traditions, of course, we're focusing on body and sensations, but this idea of specifically working with our emotions and making space is an innovation that Sokni has shared, and just very grateful to him in that practice. And yeah, I would love to hear from folks if that was hard, if it was awesome, yeah, whatever you noticed. So if you're here, you can just raise your hand. I can happily repeat to the group, or if you want to use this microphone, you're welcome. And if you're online, I think raise your little yellow hand. I see a little yellow hand already.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't know if that's my little yellow hand. My name
I
is
think it
Isabel.
is. Yes, please.
I want to thank you for being here tonight. You are exactly what I needed to hear about how to shake hands with my emotions, because I am kind of going through that, being gone one, you know, sort of like not really knowing how to work through difficult or any kind of emotions, as sort of kind of this way is just allowing, it's just wonderful. And I would really like to find out if we can put the name of where you work or the type of practice that this is somewhere on the website or on the chat, so I can refer to it. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad.
Blessing.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yes, Jason. If someone come into the mic here, there we go. And I got it.
Thank you, Eve. I was really lately able to focus on emotion and this practice. The handshaking is something we've done on Wednesday nights. But I was kind of interested, and Jimmy and I were talking about this. It's like sometimes the sort of relative length of an emotional experience is kind of curious to me. So, you know, when I'm experiencing something like a really intense feeling, I feel a sense to sort of push it away. And then I'm afraid if I take it in, I'll be in it for a long time. So I've been working with that and trying to move through it. So it's like, oh, if I have this feeling of fear or anger, or, you know, it comes and then it has if I don't engage with it, then it tends to leave. And there's a kind of a time frame or a sense of that time frame. And it's different if I engage with it. If I engage with it, it's like it can last forever, for
Right.
a long time. But so I'm kind of curious if you have any insight into just, what is it 15 seconds? Is it a minute? Is there some kind of like, I'm just curious.
Yes.
if you have
Yeah.
thought about it.
You know I do. Thanks for the opportunity to nerd out on emotion science. So yeah, what you're noticing, which is great noticing, is there's different ways our kind of engagement with emotion can lead us. So some of that kind of like pushing away is one thing, and it works temporarily. We definitely can push our emotions away. But in practice, it's such a great laboratory to experiment with inviting it in, right? We're in this, holding environment, which is relatively safe, relatively loving. So what's it like to let it in, right? Instead of push it away. And when you said engage with it, I assume you mean engage, like think about it.
Or if it's anger,
Yeah.
then be angry and really, express it
Outwardly, like talking, yelling. Yes. So what's interesting about emotions is, there's three parts. There's our trigger, there's our experience, and there's our response. And with this practice, we are we're working with the experience of it. We're not going to the trigger, and we're not trying to figure out our response. We're just like, okay, can I hold the feeling? Can I meet the feeling and be with the feeling? And as you were suggesting, what we know, at least from the kind of body's, physiological or physical arousal of emotion, because emotions are not just thoughts, they're feelings. Our emotions last about 30 seconds to 1 minute. It's very short. And yet we can cycle through them over and over and over by throwing, as Shanti Deva says, that kerosene on the fire by thinking about them, right? And especially with anger, like we are so dominant in our cognitive capacities, generally speaking, in this more modern way of living. And there's a belief that we can think our way through our problems. And sometimes we can. There's a lot of things where thinking helps, like where am I going to get dinner tonight? Or what do I really want to do this coming weekend that will be restorative for me? Like, it's good to think about. But when it comes to something like anger, often we're deluding ourselves. We're still in the grip of the emotion, and we're re-triggering it by our thinking of it, so we can make it last a lot longer. The response to our emotion can often trigger the next emotion. So I think what you're describing, Jason, is feeling frustration. And so I'm going to act it out, maybe share my grievance. Like, why did you do it that way? Like, why aren't you doing it this way? This is the way we always do it, right? This kind of expressed grievance. And then what often happens is the person we're expressing to, usually a loved one, because, hey, that's the world we live in. They say, what are you talking about? This is the way we always do it. And then you get into this real cycle. So it's not to say that we should never express our emotions. They're enormously useful, and they have great benefit for us in saving our life and helping direct us towards opportunities and helping us manage challenges. But if we are only acting from our very strong felt experience that we want to get rid of, it's unlikely that that emotion is going to direct us in the right direction, especially with anger. So it's really useful to use this laboratory space of handshake practice of what's it like to see the emotion just naturally dissipate. That's what they are designed to do. So this famous book I mentioned the other week by Robert Sapolsky, which is Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And this idea that, with a zebra, they're experiencing a lot of stress, right? They're stressed. They're competing for a water source with everyone else in the savannah. And there are these apex predators who find them very attractive. And yet they can be chased down one day. And 15 minutes later on that same day, they're just at the water hole again, right? And it's not that they're stupid. They're aware, they're conscious. If the threat arises again, they will be ready again. but there isn't that perseveration, that continuation. It's interesting. We've been thinking about emotional resilience, some colleagues and myself, and what is that? Like, what do we want? Do we want to feel no emotions, only good emotions? Neither of those. But what we want is to be able to, reduce what's called emotion inertia. So let's say I felt anxious in the morning. Can I not bring that into my next activity? Can I let my emotion experience be as it is, inform me? Maybe I make the shifts or changes needed, but not dragging it with me. And can I respond to my emotions in a way that's helpful, not maybe perpetuating more emotions, not feeling shame that I have the emotion, not trying to figure out who I can, offload my emotion upon. Those are real hallmarks of emotion resilience, that ability to avoid the inertia, choose how we respond skillfully. So thank you for the question. I see some other little yellow hands. In a blue shirt. Yes, that's you.
There we go. Hi, I'm Ron. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I've been coming to this regularly, well, semi-regularly for a while. This is the first time I've said something, but I'm compelled to, and hopefully it adds to the discussion. I do have a question, but I want to start with reflection because, first of all, I also want to find out if you're practicing this style regularly somewhere that I can participate in, because it is so aligned with a lot of the things that I'm practicing right now. So Hakomi with my therapist, if you're familiar with that practice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we're doing exactly what you're talking about. And then I just did a 7-day silent retreat at Spirit Rock in the style of Sadaya Utejaniya, and everything seems to be lining up. But my experience, and which I had a very intense version of in this meditation, there's tears coming out of streaming down my face in the middle of it, but it is I come from a lot of trauma, and there's emotions that I have had been blocked and repressed for a long time, and I'm finding that if there is a problem, the problem is not in the emotion, it's in the resistance to it, and so I'm finding that my experience of fear or sadness or concern or worry, all these feelings, when I go into them, I don't know if good is the word, feel fulfilling somehow.
Yeah.
They definitely feel okay. I get to this place of total okayness. And the experience of that, of like knowing that that's there, that when I go into these emotions, that they're not going to last forever, and that the actual experience of them, all of the, I hesitate to use words like good and bad and negative in the space I'm in recently, but the negative parts of it are all just resistance and not going there. When I feeling anything is powerful, and the experience of that just almost always, the knowing that just turns into joy. It brings joy. It transmutes into joy. Just the, oh my God, this is so much easier.
Yeah.
Just brings joy. And I wonder if that's my question, is that the common experience? Is there somewhere, is this something that takes, that people build up to? Is there somewhere to go from here? What am I looking for?
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, I'm so glad you shared with us, and like that you're here and also having your voice in the room. So just thank you for that. You're describing something it's interesting. There's two things. One from, this more research side. What you're describing, I think, is a sense of emotion authenticity. And what happens when we repress our emotions a lot over time, either because of trauma or because we're in a workplace where our authentic emotions are not welcome and we just suppress, is we get, a sense of self-alienation. We actually are unable to feel our feelings. And when we suppress our difficult emotions, we're also suppressing our enjoyable emotions. We don't have a nuanced system. And so we get this kind of, it's almost like, moving through life with gloves on your hands and not really feeling, right? Like you're dulled. And so it's hard to actually experience. And so what I think might be happening as part of what you're describing is, this homecoming to a sense of fullness, of beingness. And that is joyful, right? And I think of one of my root teachers, Alan Wallace, who talks about the kind of truth-given joy, the joy of being present with whatever is here, just as it is, without the grasping, without the pushing away, right? The joy of just being. And it's not like the joy of being Ron, it's the joy of feeling. And so, a really interesting part too is that Sokni Rinpoche talks about a lot is how do we help ourselves work with our difficult emotions often starts with getting a little unstuck from this self-orientation. Another part about what you described, like, is this normal? These feelings of kind of joy at just, I'd say, like coming home. Yeah. And it's like kind of surprising, but it's not, because if you read about it in all the texts, like it's there. It's not, this idea of this unconditioned joy. Alan Wallace, again, he talks about it as this eudaimonic feeling of joy. This is also used in some of the literature of this term from Plato of the joy of what I cultivate and bring. And that he puts in a little opposition to hedonic, which is what we kind of take from, or the stimulus driven. Nothing wrong with hedonic joy, but a little different for a whole variety of reasons. It doesn't last. And often it can kind of create a cycle of grasping, AKA samsara, right? This feels good, I want more. It feels good, I want more. And, it's interesting you asked, what more can I do? You're there. And I know what you mean, like how to, you're coming off, it sounds like a 7-day retreat and some powerful experiences of self work and support with therapy. So sometimes we get these wonderful glimpses of what it's like to be in harmony, just period. Sometimes they last, sometimes they don't, but they're there. And like knowing and being able to even have, and that's why I'm so grateful you shared with us so that we could kind of feel that transmission of to know that that is a place we can all come home to. Like that is our true home. Like just remembering that is so much of the practice, because we will become separate from it until we're fully woken up. We're going to find it and lose it and find it and lose it and look for it everywhere else. And then it was sewn into our own shirt and, that whole process. And that's okay. But yeah, I'm just very moved by that description. I have experienced that level of just joy of being with the difficulty and with the rest. So yeah, thank you. I see some other hands there. Yes, in the black shirt, like as far as I can get.
Okay, yeah. Hi, Eva. Thanks for the session tonight. Really appreciate it. This technique reminded me of something that I remember from Carl Jung. He said the key question is, does the complex have you, or do you have the complex? I find that question, when I'm ruminating on an emotion, thoughts are racing, that asking that question just kind of opens up enough space, just a little space, or it's like, oh yeah, it does have me. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you're talking about having that space. when you have questions. How do you cultivate that? Because you talked about inviting it in. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. I love the quote. I would say one of my top goals as someone really interested in emotion awareness and teaching that and inviting that and cultivating it myself is I would really love for people to get a sense of their role in their emotions, right? So that relates a little bit to it. Is it have me or am I feeling it? And we often think our emotions happen to us when in fact, a lot of it is our personal material that's getting met, right? So, for example, we could have a very similar experience to a friend. Like, let's say, Erin, my friend who's here tonight, and let's say we both get a text and the text says, sorry, can't meet you after for ice cream tonight. Sorry, can't make it. And for Erin, she's like, okay, no big deal. No ice cream, friend isn't going to make it. But for me, because I have like a history of not feeling worthy and that maybe my friends don't really appreciate me, I go into a spiral of fear and concern. So a lot of our emotion response is ours, right? And so I think that is meaningful, and not that we go ahead and think that, we're so bad and terrible and we're so caught up, but just to recognize that there's a lot of complexity in our emotion responses, which is why there's something so beautiful and simple about staying with the feeling. Not why did this happen? Who's responsible? What's my part? What's their part? Let me just be with this feeling itself. Now, more kind of specifically to your question of how do we make space, I think there's a lot of different ways. I really find quite useful literal visible space. And I'm not alone in this. Other practitioners, will talk about this practice of merging the mind with space. So I find it very useful to have, we're so lucky in San Francisco. I hope some of you also have high hills where you live, because we can really get space. And you start to see that the space that's full with all the city and environment or maybe hills, is just as equal to the space above it. And that does something to us to be able to see that spaciousness. And literally you can invite in the spaciousness. So you can practice open-eyed practice of letting the mind merge with space. It's really quite simple. I find that quite useful. The other with space, and I think what Soknir Rinpoche would say is, don't think of it as a concept, feel space. So invite space as a felt experience. And so it's different than feeling full, like, oh, I just had dinner, I'm full. It's a space. So for me, one area that's very noticeable when I make space, I clench my hands, don't even realize it. It's not like this. There's just this tension. And when I notice in practice I've made space, I notice that my hands feel more at ease. So it might be that we just start to familiarize and notice, like, what are the parts of us where we notice space and we can go there, right? Noticing, okay, it's my hands. Can I make space there? I also, a dear friend and my co-teacher on Wednesday nights, Chandra Easton, is a big proponent of chanting. And that's not for everybody. If it's for you, it is a great way to make space. Really gives a sense, not only are the vocal cords lit up so that we can have that sense of, our kind of whole system being more at ease, but there's devotion in which we're humbling ourselves in the face of something greater. And when we humble ourselves in the face of something greater, we get awe. And awe is a sense of expansion. So just a couple. I hope one of those is useful.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think we have one more question there on the internet world.
Hi.
Yes, hi.
I was wondering, I suffer a lot with anxiety, and especially as I am a woman of a certain age and certain physical changes are affecting me that way.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, it's one of, I can sit with a lot of emotions, but that's one that is especially hard because I feel like something, it's giving me the message, something terrible is going to happen.
Yeah.
To sit with that is just so challenging. So anyway, I'm just wondering if you have any
Yeah.
particular tips for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And just to kind of validate, normalize, and expand, what goes on hormonally during menopause is such a profound experience that is not talked about enough. And it indeed is like one of the most stressful experiences on the body that happens other than childbirth. So, both of them are for women. Interesting. So there is a lot of, there's just a lot of, bodily information and energy that's happening. So you're exactly right. And it's not always that our fear is based in something that is explicit and discrete and tangible. It can be signals from our body as well. That said, I think I'm going to again invite Sokni Rinpoche. One of his favorite kind of mantras for fear is recognizing our fear is real, but not true. So the feelings are real, like the heart palpitations are real, the sweating's real, the contraction's real. Is it true? And so he invites us, so sweet, his teaching in this. He says, send a message from your prefrontal cortex, so your thinking mind, which has that ability to see things more clearly, all the way to your amygdala, which is associated with this more reactive part of our mind. And he says, send this message from your prefrontal cortex to your amygdala wrapped in a lotus leaf. Right. So it's kind of his merging of contemporary neuroscience and this approach of gentleness. So when we're saying this is real but not true, we're not doing it like a command, like, hey, stop being so upset. That's not even happening right now. Or this is just hormones. Do it with such gentleness. Like, yes, this is real. Is this true right now? And as Ron mentioned earlier, when we experience something like trauma, it's a message that is real and that is true, but not true right now. So we're getting a message from the past. So how can we update our system? And sometimes that is with just the simple, real but not true is one that I have really loved. And Sokni has taught with Tara Brock. You might have heard her share that too. It's just such a useful phrase. So thank you for your question. Yeah. Any other reflections from folks in the room? It's very rich, your questions, bringing forth so many great ideas. And I feel like all of them are shared richness. Yes.
Well, hello there.
Hello there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You used the word, and I don't know why I'm sticking with it, but you said when we awaken. That was really an interesting word for you, for the use of the word awaken, because awakens now, not a future thing. It's the concept of now, of this moment. Earlier today, I had a thought of a wonderful thought. I got to work with Anna Halpern years ago in Circle the Earth, a wonderful teacher and choreographer. And as I was describing the event, I was filled with tears and I started crying. It was such a wonderful feeling. It wasn't a grief. It was a type of grief, but it was a joy. And it was a fond memory rather than, it was a joy.
Yeah.
And I allowed myself to cry. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? And so I just wanted to make that observation that it's all real. Everything, it's real. It's concrete. Yeah. But so is realization. Is concrete and endless. So I'm really glad to have heard what you, because Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and they've studied the tears of joy. They're actually chemically different than tears of sorrow. So yeah, it is. It's just a natural rising up. And I actually happily shared a lot of what I wanted to talk about with joy just in responding to your wonderful questions. But there's a little bit, I think, else that's worth thinking about. Another phrase you hear when we talk about this sense of joy that comes from within is a sense of genuine happiness. And it's a wholesome sort of happiness, like a happiness that's really connected with actually our ability to move with the four immeasurables. So to move with loving kindness and compassion, empathetic joy and equanimity, that it gives ourself a sense not of being removed from the world, but that we can kind of, like we have a four-wheel drive and really big tires and a really great, under the car system. So we can meet whatever is coming and kind of experience it for the ride. And my teacher, my beloved teacher, whose birthday is this week, dear Jennifer Wellwood, she often talks about our ability to meet with joy what life is offering us. And it's a really high level practice. It's really hard. There's a lot of things life is offering I am not that interested in, and I would really like to be different. Really like to be really different. And so how do we bring this sense of joyousness to whatever is the curriculum? I think that's a beautiful inquiry for us to hold. And that idea really invites this sense of there's a possibility for us to be connected to that sense of inner joy all the time. Again, I think we can get stuck with our sense of me or mine, or kind of personalizing our difficult emotional experiences, either, that they shouldn't be happening to me, or I'm responsible for all of them. And this idea that, one of the ways that we can most impede our joy is self-centeredness is something you see a lot in this book of joy that came out. It's by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. We're hoping to do a screening of the movie here, The Book of Joy. And that was the topic of this a summit that's coming up that has been inspiring me to think about joy. And the way that the Dalai Lama especially talks about this sense that self-centeredness gets in the way of our joy is we end up looking for joy in the wrong places because we're just looking to optimize our own sense of well-being, right? So how do I get happiness? And we forget that it's a collective experience, that there is no individual joy if we're just seeking it for ourselves. And that also our self-centeredness can get in the way of recognizing one of the most intrinsic sources of joy, which is service and showing up for others, altruism, empathy, and care. And again, not that we need it, but there's great scientific research on this, that our sense of altruism and our sense of even kind of belongingness to each other increases our longevity. Not just our well-being here and now, but how long we get to live. So I really appreciate that understanding of joy. And then I wanted to pay a little homage to Howie, beloved Howie. He shared this, I'm sure he still shares it, this wonderful quote on joy by William Blake. And if I were him, I would have a folder of all my, so imagine I'm pulling it from somewhere. And he who binds himself to joy does the winged life destroy. He, she, they, who kisses it, the joy as it flies, lives in eternity's sunrise. So one more time. He, she, they, who binds themselves to joy does the winged life destroy. He, she, they, who kisses it, the joy as it flies, lives in eternity's sunrise. So again, just not grasping. And I'll just repeat the wonderful wisdom of Sokni Rinpoche, which is, do not think the joy is yours. It's within you. It's always there, but it's not yours. So that's my wish for all of us. So let's take a moment and just dedicate the merit of our practice here. Once again, returning to a sense in the body, noticing if we feel maybe some inkling or flicker of that joy. And considering that anything we may have learned tonight, anything that may have been opened, could be have done so in benefit for the sake that all beings could know joy, all beings could feel safe and happy, all beings can be at ease. Thank you. Such a delight to be here with you all. And yeah, have a joyful evening, rest of your week.